Yes, Mr. Millett.
Mr. Chairman, we now call our next witness to give evidence, Mr. Jose Vieiro.
Good, thank you.
I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I should give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but
and
the
nothing
truth.
but the truth.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vieiro. Would you like to sit down and make yourself comfortable?
Thank you.
All right. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vieiro, can I ask you please to give the Chairman your full name?
It's Jose Vieiro.
Jose Vieiro. And can I start by thanking you very much for coming here today to give evidence to the inquiry. It is immensely important that we hear from you, and we're very grateful to you for your assistance. If at any time you need a break from giving evidence, or you find it all too much, then please just say, and we can take a break at any time. It's not a problem, and there's no rush. If you find my questions difficult to understand, or you can't hear them, I'm very happy to repeat the question or put the question in a different way. So just say. Again, there's no problem.
Okay.
And sometimes when you're answering, I may be looking at the screen or at my notes, but I will be still listening to what you've got to tell us, because of course it's extremely important. And I start then by showing you your statement, your witness statement to the inquiry, which is IWS quadruple 01122. And that is page 1 of your statement. It's best to, you can either look at it on the monitor in front of you on your desk or at the screen at the back of the room. If you turn please to page 14, you can see a date at the bottom, 12th of October 2018, and a signature there. Is that your signature?
It is.
Have you had an opportunity to read this statement recently?
Yes, I have.
And can you confirm for the Chairman that its contents are true?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, there are no exhibits to this statement to put into the record.
Right, thank you very much.
I'm going to begin, Mr. Vieiro, if I can, by asking you a number of just background questions, first of all. You lived at flat 46, didn't
Yes.
you, at Grenfell Tower, and that's on the 7th floor?
Yes.
Yes. When did you first move into Grenfell Tower?
In March 1976.
76. So you, at the time of the fire, you'd been living in Grenfell Tower for about 41 years.
Yes.
And I think it's right that you raised your 3 children in your flat at Grenfell Tower.
Yes.
Who lived in flat 46 with you in June 2017?
My wife, my daughter, and me.
And did you rent or did you own flat 46?
Rent.
You rented it. Do you remember who you rented it from?
From the council, Kensington and Chelsea.
Yes. And your daughter at the time, was she an adult?
Yes.
That she was living with you? And which bedroom did she occupy?
Second bedroom, are you going?
Yes, I see. We'll look at the plan shortly. Before I turn to the events of the night of the 13th and 14th of June 2017, I just want to ask you some questions about windows in your flat. Can I ask you please to go to page 12 of your statement and turn to paragraph 52? And you can see that on that page there, Mr. Vieiro, there's a heading, Windows, and you describe paragraphs 52 to 55, all down page 12, your experiences with the windows and how they were replaced. And at paragraph 53, you say, I was in the flat when the windows were installed. then you go on to say, in the third line, the new windows were installed 10 centimetres further out from the wall of the flat than the location of the old windows. There was also a very big windowsill. I recall that despite the distance between the walls of the flat and the windows themselves were noticeably smaller than the old windows they were replacing. And then you say, I noticed that there was a gap, a 2 to 3 inch gap, between the edge of the window and the wall of the building. Was that the case? Well, which windows are you referring to there in the flat?
All the windows.
All of them. And when you refer to the edge of the window, can you describe which edge it is?
It was in both sides of the window and the outside, between the previous wall and the next cladding that they put.
And the 2 to 3 inch gap, was that a gap which faced you as you looked at the window from the inside, or was it to the side, parallel with the wall?
It was a gap in both sides of the window, as you look at the window, and between the old window and the new window as well, on the outside.
Okay. You then say, to fill that gap, the window contractors use thick sheets of a white foamy material. I would describe it as being very similar to polystyrene, but I cannot recall much more about the material that they used. I do not recall observing the installation of my kitchen window, but on all of the windows I did see being installed, this material was used. First of all, Mr. Vieiro, which windows in your flat did you see being replaced?
The 2 bedrooms and the living room.
Okay. So all of them except the kitchen?
Yes.
Thank you.
And should I understand that the gaps that you are describing, you saw there during the course of the work going on?
Well, I noticed that then even before that, because the frames for the windows, they were fitted before.
Yeah.
And I knew that the windows, they are going to be smaller, the ones, because I can see it was a piece in each side, from the frames on the outside and the frames from the old windows.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, when you say in your statement at paragraph 53, to fill that gap, the window contractors used thick sheets of a white foamy material, did they do that? Did they fill the gap because you asked them to, or did they do that anyway?
No, they do that. I didn't ask them to do anything.
I see. And then at paragraph 54, you go on to say, after the windows were replaced, after the installation of the new windows, I noticed that there was a breeze coming into the flat from underneath all of the windows. And then you say, I complained to this about the window and to the window installers themselves. Can you tell us exactly where the breeze was coming from?
From underneath the window, the sill, underneath the sill. They place it on top of the old sill, but underneath of it, the window, it came in.
Okay.
Not the window itself, it was underneath the sill of the window.
Underneath the sill. And was that so? Was that true in respect of all of the windows in your flat?
Some of them, they were more than the other, but most of them, they have some kind of draft coming in.
Right. Was the draft forceful? Was it strong, or was it
not really
strong?
strong, but you can notice, especially when it was cold, you can see the breeze coming and it was cold.
Right. Do you remember which window let in the most breeze?
Probably it was my daughter's bedroom and one of them in the living room.
Just so we can be absolutely clear, can I ask you to be shown the plan of the flat, please, which is MET 000012593 at page 12. Now, I should just be clear, Mr. Vieiro, this is a plan diagram of Grenfell Tower on the 4th floor, as you can see, because it refers to flat 16 in the top right, which we know is on the 4th floor. But the design and layout of each floor above the 4th floor is the same. Your flat would have been immediately above flat 16 in the northeast corner.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
When I say immediately above flat 16, some floors above it, 3 floors above it. Was the layout of your flat the same as we can see here on the diagram, on the plan?
Yes.
And so, which bedroom did you occupy?
The first bedroom as you go in, just in front of the main door.
Right. So the bedroom to the one of the two, the bedroom on the left.
Yes.
And did your daughter occupy the one on the right?
Yes.
Yes. So the windows that let in the most breeze, you think, were the window to the second bedroom, the one on the right, and the windows round the living room. Of the windows round the living room, which were the windows that let in the most breeze? Do you remember?
Yes, was the one in the corner facing north.
Facing north, okay. So just to the left of the corner column. Is that right? If you look at the plan, just to the left
Just
of the corner column.
1 second, because it's...
Yes, of course, take your time.
It's because from my position that the flat number 6, it doesn't match with the northwest position. I mean, northeast, as I have it in my mind. The layout is the same, it's exactly the same, but it's there where it's... I cannot make it from the...
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes?
It's okay, I can see it now.
Yeah, you think we can take time and go through the
No, it's,
diagram if you'd like to. Okay, so you think that the window. Well, perhaps if we do it differently, Mr. Vieiro, shut our eyes and imagine you going into your living room. You go into the door. Which was as you go into the living room, which was the window that let in the most breeze? Do you think?
the one on the right side.
The one on the right side.
Yes.
The living room is sort of L-shaped, so you've got windows on 2 sides.
Yes.
And as you go into the living room, it's the one on the right.
The one on
Facing
the right,
north.
facing north.
Right.
But is the window that is near the east side of the...
Yes. Now, if we can go back to paragraph 54 of the statement, you say, Mr. Vieiro, in your statement there that in the second line, I complained about this to the window installers themselves. The people that installed the windows told me that they were doing as they were told. I complained to Ryden in person that there were gaps. Now, do you remember who the people were who installed the windows? Do you remember the name?
No.
Okay. Do you remember who you complained to at Ryden about the gaps?
I complained one, it was 2 people that they go around checking on everything and asking for signatures to do the work and the appointments, and those are the ones I complained to them.
Were you ever asked to sign a piece of paper saying you were happy with the windows?
I don't know. I don't remember exactly if it was for the windows. I signed papers for the work done, yes.
Okay. And then you go on to say, I cannot recall to whom I complained, but eventually Ryden staff did come back to the flat to observe the problems about which I was complaining. The people that came back to remedy the problem with the windows were not the contractors that had completed the work, but rather Ryden staff. I do remember that they were different people from different companies. First of all, do you remember when, even roughly, they came back to remedy the problem?
A few weeks after they did the windows, after I complained, they come and do the
Right.
work.
Were Ryden still on site doing the refurbishment
Yes.
at that time? They were. And after the Ryden staff returned to fill the gaps, was there still a breeze coming through the windows?
No, sometimes I feel that it was cold coming in, but it was no way that we can figure that it was a breeze coming underneath the windows. I think after the repair they were okay.
Right. And then you go on to say, in paragraph 55, to fix the problems with the breeze in the living room, I recall that Ryden sealed the bottom of the windowsill with silicone or some other sealant from a gun. In my bedroom, they put a strip of plastic similar in appearance to the material from which the windows were made directly under the windowsill in order to block the flow of air coming into the bedroom. Did you observe them doing that work?
Yes.
And did it take long? Did it take them long?
No.
And do you remember whether it worked and kept the breezes out?
Sorry?
Did it work to keep the breezes out?
Yes.
It did. And as at the night of the fire in June 2017, were you experiencing any kind of drafts or breezes through the windows in your flat?
No.
Can I then ask you about a different subject, which is knowledge of fire safety? If you'd go, please, to page 2 of your statement. So going back in your statement. At paragraph 7, you say, in the fourth line, I additionally was aware of the so-called stay-put policy that existed in the tower from signs outside of the lifts, again, which I will discuss in more detail later in this statement. I knew from my work in hotels and restaurants, however, that you should take an early opportunity to escape the scene of a fire if it's safe to do so. My experience with work is the reason that I decided to check the landing immediately outside the front door of our flat. Now, I just want to ask you, first of all, about the signs that you'd seen. Can we please have up on the screen BLA *000 2416? And this is a safety notice which our experts took after the fire, sited between the lifts in one of the lobbies. This is the one taken at floor 3. Is that the sign that you were referring to in your statement?
Yes, that's the last one, yes.
Okay. And do you remember how long before the fire, how soon before the fire, you saw these signs?
I don't know exactly the time when they were fitted, but it was at the time of or shortly after the refurbishment.
Do you remember whether there was a sign like this between the lifts on the 7th floor where you lived?
No, I cannot remember for sure. I have seen it then, but it probably was in the lobby downstairs,
Right.
on the ground floor.
Do you have any recollection of seeing this sign or this kind of sign anywhere else in Grenfell Tower before the fire?
No, because apart from the ground floor lobby or the 7th floor, I'm rarely used to go into the other floors.
Okay. And can I just ask you to look then at the beginning of paragraph 17, where you say this, in this paragraph 17, page 2 of your statement. You say at the beginning of paragraph 7, I was not particularly worried when we first discovered that there was a fire, as I have experienced a number of fires in the Grenfell Tower during my time living there. None of those fires escaped the flats that the fires were in. And you do go on to discuss those later on. But just while we're on that, during those fires, do you remember anybody telling you to stay put in your flat while the fire was dealt with?
Yes, once somebody was telling us that not to go out, to stay in the flat because it was okay to be in there.
Do you remember who that was?
No.
Was it someone from the fire brigade or
It
someone?
was somebody from the emergency, yes.
Right. As at June 2017, what did you understand was the advice given to all residents of Grenfell Tower about what they should do if there was a fire somewhere in the tower?
I'm sorry, can you ask it again? I didn't catch the first part.
Okay. As at June 2017, at that time, did you have any understanding about what the general advice to Grenfell Tower residents was about what they should do if there was a fire?
To stay put, unless the fire is in their own flat.
Okay. And did you have that understanding because of the notice or some other?
Yes. No, for the notice, from
Right.
the notice.
And I'm going to turn to the night of the 13th, 14th of June 2017, Mr. Vieiro, if I can. And I'd just like to show you page 2 of your statement, where I think we still are. And you start your description of that night at paragraph 5. And you say, at approximately 01:05 a.m., Mrs. Costa from flat 103 on the 13th floor phoned our flat on our landline telephone. And is that Dorinda?
Yes.
Dorinda Costa. And can I ask you, how do you know that she called at approximately that time?
Because I look at the watch, because it was not a time that we received phone calls that late at night, and because of that I thought it was something going on, and I checked on my watch.
Now, I didn't quite catch the first part of your answer, and I don't think the transcriber did either. What did you look at to check the time when she called?
Well, my wife took the call, and I look at my watch, because it was not time to receive a phone call.
Okay. And were you in bed at the time?
Yes.
And in paragraph 6 of your statement, I'm sorry, can I just go back a little bit? Paragraph 5, you say, my wife answered the telephone and her and Mrs. Costa had a conversation. Mrs. Costa sounded panicked. Could you hear what Mrs. Costa was saying? Or could only your wife hear?
My wife was telling me what it was, but it was, I can hear that she were voices on the phone.
Right.
As well, but my wife told me that she was phoning and it was a fire.
Right. You then say at paragraph 6, we both got up immediately. Whilst my wife was still on the telephone, I ran to the living room via the hallway, past my daughter's bedroom and the bathroom. At that time, do you remember whether you smelt or saw any signs of fire?
No.
What about smoke? Did you see or smell any smoke?
No, I didn't see any smoke or smell any smoke at that time.
Were your living room windows open?
There were some of them.
Some of them. What about the windows in your bedroom?
He was sopping as well.
What about your daughter's bedroom? Do you remember?
He was sopping.
And then at paragraph 8 of your statement, on the top of page 3, you say, from the window in the dining room, I went to the landing and opened the door. Where is the dining room in your flat? Is it part of the living room?
Sorry?
Where is the dining room in your flat? Is it part of the living room?
It's part of the living room.
Okay. And you say, I went to the landing and opened the door. And you say, there was no sign of smoke or fire on the landing. Did you shut the front door?
Yes.
You did. And at paragraph 9, you say you went back to the bedroom and got dressed. And then you say, in the second line, whilst my wife was changing, I went back to the window in the living room, or in the living, from which I'd looked before. Now, just pausing there, which window in the living room did you look out of the first time?
I should look out at the one on the right, near the kitchen.
Okay, let's just have that up on the screen if we can. Again, can we look back, please, at the flat plan, which is MET 000012593. And if we just expand flat 6, can you tell us which window you looked at first time?
The one on the right.
There are 3 on the right, or there are 2 in the living room, 1 in the
It's
kitchen.
2 in the living room, 1 in the kitchen. Is the one in the middle.
The one in the middle.
Between the
Okay. And the second time you looked out, did you look out of the same window?
yes.
Same window. Now, you then say, you saw, this is the third line of paragraph 9, I saw thick black smoke moving upwards from below the window. And the thickness of the smoke meant that I could not see where it was coming from. And then you say, I could also see orange sparks below my kitchen window, though I cannot remember how far below my window they were. I also caught the strong smell of plastic burning. At that point, when you were looking out, did any smoke or sparks enter your flat?
No, not inside. No.
Did you see any signs of fire about to enter your flat at that time?
No.
And when you describe the strong smell of plastic burning, was that when you looked out of the window, or could you smell that in your living room if you weren't looking out of the window?
No, if you go to the window, you smell it. Inside the flat, it was at that time, it was not.
Right. Now, paragraphs 10 and 11, you continue to refer to what you did next. And you say at the beginning of paragraph 10, I opened the front door to the landing again. My wife was with me by the front door. Why did you do that? Why did you open the front door?
Well, because I was hesitating to go out or to wait to see what is going on, and I want a reference. I want to see if it was smoke or it was something that it tells me for sure that it was a big fire going on,
Yes.
and that in case I had to leave, that the way out it was clear.
And you say in the next sentence, I recall there was no smoke in the lobby and certainly no fire. Could you smell anything when you put your head out into the lobby?
No, not in the lobby, no.
So it was clear as normal, was
Yes.
it? And then you say, 3 lines up from the bottom of paragraph 10, on my way back into the flat, I got small towels from the bathroom, as I knew from fire drills at work that you need something to cover your mouth in the event that you need to escape the fire where there is smoke. Did you wet the towels?
No.
You didn't. And you then say in paragraph 11, I walked into the kitchen, and as soon as I did so, I saw my nylon kitchen curtains had caught fire with a bright orange flame. I closed the kitchen door behind me so as my wife would not know that there was now a fire in the flat. How long did you spend in the kitchen?
Seconds.
Seconds.
1 minute and 2 minutes, I don't know exactly. Time, it was very long.
Right. Could you see anything else burning around the window at that time?
But the first thing I noticed burning, it was the strata. That's the one he put the fire on the curtains.
Right. Sorry, I'm not sure I caught what you just said. I'm so sorry, Mr. Vieiro. The first thing you saw burning was...
No, the
was
curtains, because they catch fire from the strata.
what? Right. From the strata?
Yes.
What's the strata?
The fan.
The fan. Oh, the ex strata. Okay.
Yeah.
The expel air. So did you see the fan on fire?
Yes.
Okay. And I see. Did you see any flames around the edges of the windows?
No, the flames first came through the fan, where the hole where the fan was.
I see. And did you see whether the fan was still in its place?
No, it was. It gave in and it was hanging by the electric wire that is supported.
Okay. And so was there a hole where it had been?
It was a hole where the fire was coming in.
The fire was coming in through the hole, was it?
Yes.
Was that the only place at that time where fire was coming
At
into
the
your
beginning,
flat?
it was the only place. Then it started to come through the left side of the window.
Right, I see. The left side of the window.
Yes.
At the bottom of the window, or the side, or the top?
All the left side.
Whole of the left
But
side.
more towards the top than the bottom.
You then say in paragraph 11, once again the strong smell of plastic burning was overpowering. Did it have a physical effect on you?
Not at that moment, no.
Okay. You then in paragraph 12 say, I pulled the curtains down with my hands onto the floor of the kitchen. In pulling the curtain down, I caused small burns on my hands. I attempted to stamp out the flames by jumping on the curtains that were now on the ground, and the flames subsided. And then you say, the left-hand side of the window caved in and landed inwards into the building and landed against my fridge, the back of which was placed tight against the window frame. Do you remember whether there was a noise when that happened?
Yeah, it was a bit of a noise, a crashing noise, but there was not because the wind didn't travel very far, because it came from the top and it landed on top of the fridge. It was a tall fridge that it wasn't there near there.
And that's the left-hand side of the window. What happened to the right side?
Stay put.
So it stayed put. Okay. And did you see what had caused the window on the left side to cave in that way?
No, I assume it was the fire that it was covering it.
And could you see what was happening to the window sill?
The window sill started to melt, top and left side first, and then all around the window and the sill down.
Could you see, once it started to melt, did it start to drip and pull away? Did it start to melt away from the window?
Yes, it was completely separated. Only the skeleton of the window stays there. The rest it was melting.
How close to the window were you when it was doing that?
1 meter.
Really? Did it feel very hot?
Yeah, it started to get hot, but it wasn't really a big fire. When the time I was there, it was not a big fire. It was fire around the window, but it was nothing big, nothing.
Right. When the windowsill and the side of the window started to melt, did you see behind it? Could you see anything behind that?
No.
Okay. Could you see what was happening at the top of the window frame? at that time when the left-hand side of the window collapsed?
It was melting exactly the same than the size. It was the same material. It was burning exactly the same and melting and dripping down.
Right. You then say in paragraph 12, the last sentence, I could now see fire burning in my flat and the smoke was getting worse. Was anything actually burning in your flat, apart from the curtains that you've extinguished? Was anything else on fire in your kitchen at that stage?
No, not that I can see.
So the smoke, when you say the smoke was getting worse, was the smoke coming in from outside?
It came from outside.
And what colour was the smoke that you could see at that time?
It was grey, black. It was a dark color.
Right.
But it was not a huge amount that it was coming in.
Right. Could you taste it or smell it? Did it?
It smelled, yes, it smelled
Right.
plastic, yes.
Okay. And then you say at paragraph 14 on page 4, I went back towards the bedroom, closing the kitchen door behind me. My wife was standing outside of the front door waiting for me to leave. And then you continue to explain what you collect. And you say in the third line, I left, fourth line I should say, I left the flat as quickly as I could, locking our front door behind us. My wife and I walked into the landing area immediately outside the front door of our flat. At this time, between 1:10 and 1:15 a.m., there was no evidence of fire or smoke in the landing area on the 7th floor. Now, I just want to ask you about the timing. How did you know that it was this time, or between these two times, do you think?
Well, I cannot be sure exactly the time. I wasn't looking at my watch, but it was about the time that they took me. And by the time that we got down, it was around that time. It can be a minute more or less, but I cannot say precisely what time it was.
Okay. Now, you say that, as we've just seen, there were no signs of smoke or fire in the landing area on the 7th floor.
Yeah.
Did you notice anything about the temperature in the communal landing on your floor at that time? Were the lights still on and working?
They were on.
Could you hear any sound?
Yeah, I heard voices, people walking past on the stairs. I can hear them.
Right. Could you hear any mechanical sound?
No.
Now, I wonder whether the witness could please be shown INQ quintuple 0461. Now, this is a still photograph, Mr. Vieiro, taken from the CCTV from the camera placed on the 7th floor communal lobby. And this, I think, is the first picture of you on that camera that night after 1 a.m. And this is with an adjusted time. It's 01:14:10. There's an unadjusted time in the bottom left-hand corner of 01:14:50, but when it's adjusted, as it must be, it's 01:14:10. And does this trigger a recollection of your leaving your flat at about that time?
No.
Can you identify yourself in that picture?
Yes, I think it's me, yes.
That's you. You remember wearing a stripy shirt?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you say in your statement at paragraph 15, at the end of paragraph 14 and beginning of paragraph 15, if we can just have both of those up. You say at the end of 14, as we were walking toward the stairwell, we saw a single firefighter emerge from the doorway to the stairs. The firefighter was only slightly taller than me, approximately 5'4" tall. He did not have any equipment with him, only a cylinder of about 2 feet length on his back. He did not have a mask on, and he was not wearing breathing apparatus. And I think you then go on to say that you took him into your flat and showed him the fire in the kitchen.
Yes.
And picking it up at paragraph 17 of your statement, at the bottom of the page, you say, at this time the whole of the plastic window frame had melted. The pane of glass on the right was still in place. It had not yet collapsed onto the floor. Whilst nothing else in the kitchen had caught fire, the whole of the window surround was aflame. The firefighter looked at the window and said, there's nothing we can do with this, or there's nothing we can do, we have to go out, or words to that effect. I cannot recall the precise words that he used. Did the firefighter mention staying put at that time, or did he make it pretty clear to you that you had to go?
He told me that I had to leave.
Right. When you went into the kitchen at that time, how much had the fire spread into the kitchen?
Not much. It was. I think it was starting to burn in the sliding door between the kitchen and the living room.
Right.
But still, it was not a huge fire.
Right. Did the firefighter show surprise? Was he?
No, really, no, not like I seen that he was surprised. He was
Right.
not.
Did you see the firefighter using his radio to contact anybody?
No, I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Do you remember what the smoke was like inside your flat at that
It was
time?
getting thicker and darker all around the ceiling of the kitchen.
Right. So it had come down from the ceiling. How far down from the ceiling had it come? Do you remember?
No, I think it was more a question of it was going up. It was coming from the window and it was staying up like a cloud on top of near the ceiling.
How thick was the cloud at the top of the ceiling?
No, very thick at that moment.
Okay. Could you smell or
Yes,
taste the
it
smoke?
was at that time. The smell it was getting worse and worse. It was unpleasant to breathe in there.
Right. Did it affect your breathing?
No.
And what was the temperature in your kitchen like at that time?
Then it was getting hot. It was
Right.
a lot hotter than it was before.
And then at paragraph 19 of your statement, I should just say, you describe in 18 how you turned around and left with the firefighter and then wanted to go back and collect your mobile phone and your glasses.
Yes.
So you go back into the flat,
Yes.
as it were, a second time. And at 19 you say, with the towel over my mouth I walked back into our flat. The smoke hit me immediately. Whilst it was not thick, it was pungent and particularly acrid. It was like nothing I had ever smelt before and nothing I've smelt since. I could see in front of me, but the smell was simply indescribable. It immediately made my eyes extremely painful. I decided to leave my phone and my glasses in the flat, as retrieving them was just not worth the risk. And at the end you say, I walked no more than 2 paces in the flat before I turned round and left. Looking at all that together, when you opened the flat, where had the smoke reached in your flat?
It was start to come into the corridor, but it was a bit of smoke in the corridor, leading to the sitting room and the kitchen, but it was nothing big. It was the worst thing. It was the smell. The smell is rich. Even the front door, you can smell it from the front door. You can.
Right. And were you in the hallway when you felt the effect of that smoke?
Yes, I just turned. I was about in the front of the second bedroom.
Right.
But then I decided to turn back.
Yeah. And looking at the smoke from the front door, was it a dense, thick black cloud, or could you see through it?
I can see through it.
You
In
could see
the corridor,
through it.
you can see through
You
it.
could. And what colour was it? Do you remember?
It was greyish.
Okay.
No real black like it was in the kitchen.
And was the smell of the smoke different on this occasion, the second time you went back into the flat, from the smell that you experienced when you first noticed the smoke at the living room window.
It was much stronger than before,
Right.
but the smell it was the same, but it was much stronger. It was more difficult to breathe.
And you say that the smoke was painful to your eyes. You said it made my eyes extremely painful.
Yes.
Was that the smoke or just the air around the smoke?
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I felt that my eyes they were hurting, but I don't know if it was from the smell or from the smoke itself.
Right. And when you left to go out of the flat, did the pain in your eyes stop or did it carry on?
Yeah, most of it was no pain after that. No.
And you say at paragraph 20, I walked out of the flat closing but not locking the door behind me. Was your door self-closing?
Sorry?
Was your door self-closing? Did it have a self-closing mechanism on it? Or did you have to pull it shut?
You had to pull it.
You had to pull it. Did your door ever have a self-closing mechanism on it?
I don't know. It was at the beginning. It was, but it was so many doors replaced that is. I don't remember if it's that.
Right. And where was your wife at this time when you'd gone
It
in?
was in the lobby in front of the lifts.
And when you came out of the of your flat, what was the conditions in the lobby like at that point?
It was the same. It was no smoke or smell in there.
And did you see the firefighter at that point that you'd shown your flat to?
No.
You didn't. Now we've got another picture, which is INQ quintuple 0466, which has an unadjusted time of 1:22:18, which adjusted gives us 01:21:38, and we've worked out that this is the last in the sequence of pictures on the camera, Mr. Vieiro, on this floor at this time. Can you? And it's not really easy, but can you identify yourself in this picture, or at least part of you?
Yeah, I think it is me. Yes.
All right. And that gives us at least a time of when you were on this floor for the last time. In your statement at paragraph 20, page 5, if we can just continue through that, you say, halfway down that paragraph, I joined my wife who was standing by the stairwell waiting for me. At this time my vision was not impaired, the lights were on and the lobby area was not too smoky, although I do recall that there was some smoke lingering near the ceiling. Do you remember whether this was the first time that you saw smoke in the lobby?
Yes.
How far down from the ceiling did the smoke come at that time? Do you
It
remember?
was close to the ceiling.
It's close to the
And
ceiling.
it was just a small clouds of smoke. It was not something that it was small. It was
Yes.
staying on the ceiling.
Yes, I see. And did you see where the smoke was coming from?
No.
Did you know whether it had come out of your flat into the lobby?
I don't think so. It was on the other side of my flat where I saw the.
It was on the other side of the lobby from your flat.
Yes.
So outside your, is this right? Outside your flat there was no smoke, but the smoke you
No.
saw in the lobby was on the other side of the lobby,
Yes. In front of the lifts.
in front of the lifts.
Yes. Between the lifts and the door to the stairwell.
Right. You didn't see where it was coming from. After you closed the front door behind you, you then went across the lobby and then took the stairs. Is that right?
Yes.
Do you remember who opened the doors to the stairwell?
I don't know if it was me or my wife. Probably my wife because she was standing there, but I don't remember exactly who opened it.
And where was the firefighter?
Sorry?
Where was the firefighter? Where did he go?
I don't know. He left before I. When we came out from my flat, he left from the floor.
And do you remember whether you or your wife, when you pushed the door into the stairwell, had any difficulty pushing it?
No.
Was there any pressure that you or she felt?
Like any other time.
Like any other time. Okay. Did you notice any smoke coming from the stairwell into the lobby when you opened the door?
No.
When you got into the stairwell, did you notice any movement of air?
No.
Like a breeze or wind or anything like that?
No. It was like any other day. It was no.
Right. When you got into the stairwell, did you notice a change in temperature?
No, not really, no.
Could you see smoke in the stairwell?
No.
Could you smell it? Could you smell smoke in the stairwell?
Start to smell burning when we are getting close to the 4th floor, but not before that.
As you went down, do you remember whether you could see if any doors were open into lobbies?
No, I don't remember, but I think all the doors to the, apart from the door on 4th floor, the rest of the doors, they were closed.
Right. And the door on the 4th floor, I think you say in paragraph 22 of your statement, was held open by a hose pipe.
Yes.
Hose. In paragraph 23 of your statement on page 6, you say that when you reached the ground floor, you say, I could see 3 or 4 firefighters in the lobby of the tower. I tried to get through the stairs door out of the building, one of the 2 doors to exit the building. One of the firefighters told me to go to the other doors on the other side of the building, the lifts door. Did he tell you why?
Yeah, I think somebody mentioned something about debris coming down from the fire because the door was on the same side at where the fire was.
Right. And was that firefighter you spoke to who told you not to go out of that door standing by that door, or did he come after you?
Yes, he was near there. He wasn't.
And when you left him and turned around and went out through the lobby, the main entrance,
Yes.
did that firefighter stay there?
Stay there, yes.
Did you notice whether that firefighter spoke to any other residents coming down the stairs?
No, I cannot be sure. I think he was talking to everybody because people keep coming down the stairs. I'm probably telling them, but I don't know. I didn't took the time to look at anything else and get out.
Do you remember on your journey down the stairs whether you saw anybody else on the stairs?
I saw a few firefighters and my neighbor from flat 45, he passed us on the stairs.
As you said in your statement. What about firefighters coming up?
Yeah, I saw a couple of firefighters going up, but no, not many, no.
And at paragraph 24 of your statement, you say, outside the tower, I found a very confused situation with firefighters and police officers everywhere. I asked 2 police officers and firefighters about where we should go. I assumed that there was going to be a roll call to ascertain how many people had been in the tower and how many people had come out, as was the norm in the fire drills I'd experienced at work. I only heard move back as the response. Had you ever had any roll calls at Grenfell Tower?
No.
And so this was your expectation based on your work experience, was it?
Well, I thought that they want to know how many people are out, no?
Yes. Did anybody ask you when you came out which flat you'd come from?
No. Or at least not that I can remember.
Did anybody ask you that question at any time during the night?
No.
You say that you asked 2 police officers where you should go and firefighters where you should go, as you can see there in paragraph 24. Did they answer you?
No. They didn't know where
They didn't
to
know.
send me and tell me to move away from the tower.
Did anybody check on you whether you required any treatment when you came out of the tower?
No.
Mr. Vieiro, thank you very much. I've come to the end of my first set of questions. I'm going to ask the chairman to have a short break now, just to make sure I've caught all the questions I want to ask you, and to see whether there are any other questions which other people might have. Mr. Chairman, is it convenient to take a 5-minute break now?
It is. Well, in fact, it's probably convenient to take a 10-minute break, isn't it?
It probably is, yes. Thank you.
We've reached about halfway through the afternoon. Mr. Vieira, we're going to have a short break now, so that Mr. Millett can consider whether there are more questions that he needs to ask you. So I'm going to ask you to go with the usher in just a moment, and also I'm going to ask you please not to talk to anyone about your evidence while you're out of the room. All right? If you go with the usher now, we'll start again at 3:05. Thank you very much. Right, 3:05 then, please. Yes, Mr. Millett. Well, one or two questions.
There's one. There's one, and it's one I should have asked.
Very good. Thank you. Do sit down, Mr. Vieiro. I think there are just a couple of questions.
Mr. Vieiro, thank you for coming back to us. I just have one or two further questions. When you and your wife went into the stairwell from the lobby through the stairwell door, do you remember whether the stairwell door closed automatically behind you?
Yes.
It did.
Yeah.
That brings me to my final question then, and that is this. Is there anything further, additional, in addition to your written witness statement and in addition to what you've told us today, about what you saw or heard or smelt or felt on the night of the fire itself that you think it's important that the chairman should know?
No, I don't have nothing to say. No, nothing more to say than that.
Well, Mr. Vieiro, it only remains for me to say thank you very much to you for coming here today and giving us your evidence and helping us with our inquiries. We really very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, and I'd like to add my thanks to those of Mr. Millett. It's really important to us to know what was going on within the building at different times on different floors. So every bit of evidence is really valuable and helpful, and we're very grateful to you for coming to give the bit that you can give. Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Right, so you're free to go. Would you like to go with the usher? She'll look after you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes,
Well, Mr. Chairman, we will now continue with further reading. I'm in your hands as to whether we should take another short break or plough straight on.
Is it convenient to plough straight on?
I think it's convenient to Mr. Rowett to plough straight on. Mr. Bilal, to plough straight on.
If he's ready to plough straight on,
he
that's
is,
what we shall do.
and I shall go and pass my thanks to the witness.
Yes, of course. Thank you. We'll just take a moment to get organised, Mr. Rowett.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I start with an explanation that what we're going to do this afternoon is to put 10 statements into the record. And if I say again, as I did this morning, but in relation to all 10 statements, whilst I will be reading extracts from some of them, they will be published in their entirety subject to any appropriate redaction. But the statement in full stands as part of the evidence before the inquiry and will be considered in full as part of that.
Yes, thank you.
I start, if I may, Mr. Chairman, with the witness statement to this inquiry of Vanessa Vieiro.
Yes.
She was a resident in flat 46 on the 7th floor, and in fact is the daughter of Jose Vieiro, from whom we've just heard, and his wife Carmen. The reference for the statement is IWS 50874. There are no exhibits accompanying the statement, but if we go to the last page, page 5, you can see that there is a statement of truth. The statement is signed and it's dated the 21st of May 2018. I don't propose to read any particular paragraphs, but just to simply say this. In the statement, Ms. Vieiro confirms that she was living with her parents in Grenfell Tower at the time of the fire, but wasn't actually present there on the night itself. She learnt of the fire at around 3 a.m. on the 14th of June after a friend from the tower contacted her, and she then travelled back to the scene. She was able to find her parents, who were by then outside the tower.
Yes, well, it's right that I should say at this stage that even though you're not reading out any particular passage, we are very grateful to Ms. Vieiro for making the statement, taking the time and trouble to do that, and that what she tells us will form part of the evidence and will be taken into account.
And I mean, what we can say, obviously, is that part of the work that the inquiry is doing is establishing who was and was not in the tower.
Yes, of
And
course.
for someone to make a statement saying where they were at the time is always very helpful.
Valuable in itself, I agree, yes.
The next statement I would like to put on the record is a statement from another person who lived on floor 7 and who was present at the time of the fire. This is the witness statement of Betty Casote, and that reference is as IWS 50768, please. Again, it's not accompanied by any exhibits, but if we go to the last page, page 10,
Yes.
there is a statement of truth. It's dated, it's signed, and it's dated the 27th of June 2018. I do propose here to read some parts of this statement, but to begin with a little bit of background. Ms. Casote confirms that she lived on her own and she was in flat 41 on the 7th floor. She'd moved there in 1996. Before that, she'd lived in Testerton Walk, and so she'd been part of the community for many years. On that night, she'd gone to bed around 10 p.m. on the 13th of June 2017, and was then woken around 12:45 a.m. by a noise in the distance. I will come back to that, but if I could start, please, with paragraph 3 on page 1.
Yes.
The statement there reads, I knew some of the neighbours who lived on the 7th floor. Mrs. Harris lived in flat 42. Michael, Elizabeth and their daughter lived in flat 43. Turafat, her husband, and their little boy lived in flat 44. A new couple and their little girl lived in flat 45. I don't know exactly when they moved in. And Jose and Carmen lived in flat 46. If I could then just, before going to the events of the night, just turn to paragraph 16 on page 4. Ms. Casote says, had not been told about any fire safety issues by the TMO or anyone else, but it had occurred to me that if there was a fire, there was only one place for us to get out, down the stairwell. I remember a friend coming to visit me a few months before the fire who said to me, Betty, what will you do if there is a fire? What if the stairs are blocked? That really worried me, and it stuck with me. Could I also just go to the next page and page 5, paragraph 21, please?
Mm-hmm.
What Ms. Casote also says is, I do remember that the fire policy was to stay put unless you see a fire or had been told to leave by a firefighter. I remember seeing a notice pinned up on a notice board by the lift which said this. If I turn now to the events of the night and Ms. Casote's recollection of those events, as I said, she recounts in her statement, and if this is on, we start on page 6 at paragraph 24, that she was woken up and it was 12:45, and what she says is, I could hear some sort of noise in the distance. I think it was an alarm going off in the building somewhere. I looked at the clock in my bedroom and it said it was 12:45. And if I take it from now from paragraph 25, the statement continues. The alarm continued to go off for the minutes afterwards, and I started to hear noise from outside. I got up out of bed and looked down from my bedroom window. I could see fire engines, 3 or 4 of them, around the base of the tower and along the road leading up to the tower. Firefighters were pulling hoses towards the building. I had not seen this before when the other fires had happened. I felt that something wasn't quite right. They were pulling hoses and looking up a lot. I put some jeans and a top on and decided to leave my flat to see what was going on. I put my shoes on, took my keys and went out. Usually I would have had to go to a cupboard in the living room to get my shoes, but this time I had a pair sitting in my bedroom for some reason. As I went out, I met Elizabeth from flat 43 on the landing. I noticed there was a faint smell of smoke in the hallway. I wasn't able to see any smoke, but I could smell it. I actually startled Elizabeth, and she jumped as she wasn't expecting to see me there. I said that something was going on, and I told her I could smell smoke. She said that she had come out as she could hear a noise in her flat that sounded like a big fan turning on. I said that I had seen firefighters outside and that we should leave. She said that we could not see the fire, so we should stay in our flats as we were supposed to. I thought perhaps she was right, that we could not see the fire, and so why would we leave? I thought I would wait until we were told to leave if we had to, as had happened before. I went back into my flat with the intention of going to bed. I decided to change into a dress so that I was more comfortable if I decided to sleep, but if I had to run out, then I could do so. Before I got on my bed, I had another look out of the window. I could hear sirens, and it was busy outside with a lot of people gathered across the green looking towards the tower. I couldn't see or smell any smoke. I decided to walk around to the kitchen, living room, to see if I could see anything else. I was totally shocked, as I could immediately see from the kitchen and living room windows a very large fire coming around the corner of the building towards the far end of my living room. The flames were huge and burning upwards. They were a very deep orange. I had never seen anything like it. There was very dark black smoke billowing away from the flames. The kitchen smelt strongly of smoke, which I now think is rather odd, as my bedroom really did not smell strongly of smoke. It was terrifying to see the fire coming towards my flat. I felt panic and remember thinking that I just needed to get out. I ran back to my bedroom and grabbed my keys and phone. I put my shoes on as quickly as possible. I remember thinking that if my shoes were in the cupboard like usual, I would have seen the fire when I had first decided to get up and see what was going on when I met Elizabeth outside. I checked my watch. It was 1:10 a.m. I ran to the hallway and across to flat 43. I knocked on the door. Elizabeth answered. She was awake and dressed. Her daughter was in a nightgown and her husband Michael was dressed. I said I saw a massive fire coming towards my flat. I then rang the bell of number 42 and they didn't answer. Michael banged on the door shouting that there was a fire. Mrs. Harris and her partner then came to the door. I walked towards number 46. Jose and Carmen opened the door before I could knock and smoke started to pour out from the ceiling of their flat. I guess because the fire had reached their flat. Turafat and her family and the new couple had come out of their flats in the meantime. I guess because of all the noise we were making. Everyone from our floor was out of their flats and gathered in the hallway. It was me, Elizabeth, Michael, their daughter, Mrs. Harris, her partner, Turafat, her husband, their son, the new couple and their daughter, and Jose and Carmen. There was hardly any smoke in the hallway, but the smell was getting stronger. It was only flat 46 of our group of flats which had smoke coming out through the door. The smoke was gradually collecting towards the top of the hallway, although it was very thin and grey. You could, however, smell the smoke quite strongly. I walked in front and opened the door to the stairwell, where I met a firefighter who was going up the stairs quite quickly. He stopped for a moment and just said, "Run, get out." We started running down. We met a second firefighter who also said, "Run, get out." He was connecting a hose to a water point a few floors down from ours. Neither of the firefighters had masks on. There was no smoke on the stairwell. We all just started running down the stairs. I had been really scared by how the firefighters had acted. Clearly it was something serious. We met a woman with a baby halfway down the stairs, I think around the 4th floor, and we told her to run as she was just slowly walking down. I think she had just come out to check what was going on. She did not seem like she had been told there was a fire or anything like that. We ran to the bottom and out to the main door at the front of the building. I understand that I'm recorded on CCTV as leaving the tower at 1:23. The main front door was shut as far as I can remember it. As soon as we opened the door, we could feel the heat. It was really strong and unlike anything I had felt before. We ran away from the tower towards a small group of people, but we were one of the first groups to come out, so there weren't a lot of people at this point. It wasn't organised. There wasn't anyone there to tell us what to do, and so we decided to run towards the sports centre. We were running past, but I stopped and stood to take a picture of the building. It was horrifying. I could not believe what was happening. Mr. Chairman, I'll stop reading there and move on to the next statement, which is Again, a statement from a resident of floor 7. This is a statement of Hermine Harris of
Yes.
flat 42. The statement reference is IWS 6087. There are no exhibits accompanying the statement, but if we go to page 7, the last page, we can see that there is a statement of truth. The statement is signed and dated the 11th of May 2018. In her statement, Ms. Harris explains that she had lived in Grenfell Tower for 41 years as of summer 2017. She lived alone, although her partner, Jean Levine, often stayed with her, and indeed was staying with her on the night of the 13th of June. Just want to read 3 paragraphs of the statement, and that's from page 3, paragraph 13. And that's the events of the night. On Tuesday, 13th of June 2017, I went to bed, leaving Jean up in the living room reading. I usually go to bed about 12 or 1 a.m., but I was tired that night, so I got myself ready for bed, and I went to watch television in the small bedroom. I must have fallen asleep, as I was then woken up by knocking at the front door. I think this was about 1 a.m. I got out of bed and went to the door. Jean said to me there was someone knocking. Sometimes we have people come and knock on the door late at night, so I thought it might be that. There was nothing to suggest that anything was wrong. I looked through the spy hole in the door, but I couldn't see anyone there. I went to the bathroom, and I was going to go back to bed when I heard more knocking. I said to Jean, "Who is that?" I looked through the spy hole again and saw my neighbour, Florence, and a fireman. Florence was in her dressing gown. The fireman was wearing a yellow helmet and a suit. I was so shocked. I opened the front door and Florence said, "Mrs. Harris, there's a fire. Get out, get out." She sounded really panicked. I stood there for a second and I didn't know what to do. I don't remember if the fireman said anything. Jean was still awake reading, so I said to him, "Come on, let's get out." We both got ready straight away, and all I grabbed was my front door keys. I thought we would be coming back in. Jean was already fully clothed. I put my slippers and my dressing gown on, and Jean and I left the flat. I was saying to Jean, "Come on, come on." As we left, I remember shutting the front door behind us. This door had been replaced some years ago and was fairly heavy, and it would close on its own due to the self-closing hinges and spring it had on it. I think it was made of wood. I closed the door ready to return to later, and we went towards the stairwell. Stairwell is across the corridor from my flat. I didn't look to see if anyone else was coming out of their flats. I didn't smell or see any smoke. The landing was clear. I made a beeline straight for the stairwell. The lobby area outside our flat was well lit, and I could see no fire or smoke at this time, which was just after 1 a.m. now. We pushed open the fire door, which is on self-closing hinges and worked okay, and this led us into the stairwell, and we started to go down the stairs. It looked the same as the lobby. It was well lit, and there was no smoke when I opened the door. It looked normal. Once we were inside the stairwell, I started to smell the smoke, and it became hotter, but not too hot. I still couldn't see any smoke, though. We moved quickly, and there were not obstacles in our way to stop us getting down the stairs, but by now I was a bit panicky. The fireman didn't give us any advice about how to leave safely, but I live opposite the door to the stairs. There's only one way to leave. It didn't take us long to get down the stairs, maybe 10 minutes. I could hear other people's steps on the stairs, but I didn't look round to see who they were. No one tried to push past us, so I didn't see anyone else. I was trying to get down the stairs quickly, just focused on getting out of the building. I don't remember seeing any other people or noticing any of the fire doors being open or shut as we went down the stairs, as we were moving fast and I was in a panic. Mr. Chairman, that's where I'm going to stop reading from that statement, but if I just for the record note that the recorded exit time for Ms. Harris is 1:26 a.m.
Yes, thank you.
The next statement I want to put on the record is that of Mr. Abraham Abebe, who lived in flat 44 on the 7th floor. The reference for the statement is IWS 50847. There are no accompanying exhibits, but if we go to page 14, the last page, please. The statement is signed and dated the 14th of June 2018. It has a statement of truth, the heading of which begins on the preceding page. To begin with a brief summary, Mr. Abebe lived in flat 44 with his wife and his son. His wife, Turafat, had lived in the tower since 1996, and Mr. Abebe had moved in 2015. On the evening of the 13th of June 2017, all three of the family were at home, and Mr. Abebe and his wife had gone to bed by around 11:30 p.m. on that night. If I pick it up then at paragraph 6 on page 2, please. I now understand that the fire in Grenfell Tower started at around 12:54 a.m. The first time that I became aware there was any problem at all in the early hours of 14th of June 2017 was with my friend Paulos, who lived on the 18th floor of Grenfell Tower, telephoned my mobile telephone, which I had on charge near to my bed at 1:32 a.m. I was confused by the call as I was partially asleep and I did not answer it. As the mobile phone was a bit of a distance from me, I could not see who was calling me at the time. My mobile telephone then rang again at 1:34 a.m. and I allowed it to ring through to my voicemail. As I began to wake up, a few minutes later I decided to get out of bed, and I looked at who had called me at such an early hour of the morning. It was then that I realized that I had missed calls from my friend Paulos, who lived in flat 153 with his wife Jeanette and their sons. If I pick up on the last sentence of the paragraph, then reads, I was not expecting a call from Paulos, and a call from anyone at that time of the morning was cause for concern. I rang Paulos back. He told me that there was a fire in the tower and that it was on his floor, floor 18. He said that he'd been woken up by noises and had checked and then found out about the fire. Paulos told me that I should check my floor and around our flat. The call ended there. Panicked, I went immediately to check our flat and landing, and in so doing I woke up my wife and my son. I cannot recall whether my wife came with me, but I remember going over to the window in the kitchen. From the kitchen I could see the reflection of the blue lights of the emergency vehicles in and around the playground at the bottom of the tower, directly underneath the window from which I was looking. I could not see fire. I instinctively went to look at the situation on our landing, and it occurred to me that the best thing to do was to leave the flat and the tower as soon as possible. I looked outside to the landing using the peephole in our front door, and I could see smoke, which was a grey-white in colour and clearly visible on our landing. At that time, I thought it was relatively thick. But given how the fire and smoke progressed on that night, I would now describe the smoke as thin, especially because we eventually battled our way through heavier smoke later on in order to leave the tower. I could still see the landing lights were on outside the door, and they were visible through the smoke. We were still in our night clothes, so I told my wife that we should put on outdoor clothes over them and said to her not to panic. We decided to leave the flat. I grabbed my son in my arms, and with my right hand I held a scarf over his mouth and face. I knew that he was more susceptible to harm from smoke than I was, and I thought that the scarf would reduce some of the risk of harm from the smoke that might otherwise be without something covering his mouth. It was very scary having to think of ways in which I would have to try and prevent my child being harmed, or even worse. My wife grabbed her purse and the flat keys, and she locked the door as we left. I was given no information about fire safety advice or guidance between moving into the tower and the eventual tragedy. I do recall seeing notices in the lobby and the lift area stating that there was a stay-put policy in the tower in the event of a fire. Instinct told me, however, that I should leave the tower as soon as possible. It was no more than 2 or 3 minutes after discovering that there was a fire in the building before my family and I left our flat. I ran out of my flat with my son in my arms. My wife, who'd locked the front door behind her, was no more than 2 or 3 steps behind me. We ran to the stairwell on our floor and ran down the stairs. The lights were still on both in the landing and on the stairwell. I could, however, see where I was going, so it was not very thick. The smoke, initially, was similar on the stairwell to that on our landing. I could see through it all right, and it was white in colour. I ran down the stairs as quickly as I possibly could, with the smoke getting progressively worse as I descended with my son. Eventually, I came to the landing between the 5th and the 4th floors. By this stage, there was a large amount of smoke in the stairwell, and it was heavy and coloured black. I was able to look into the 4th floor landing. I could see a lone firefighter slightly below me with his back opening the door to the 4th floor communal landing. He was pulling at a folded flat fire hose. I think he was pulling the hose into the 4th floor, but I cannot be sure what he was trying to do. There was thick, acrid black smoke pouring out of the door he was holding open. It was filling the stairwell at that level. It was unbelievable. I could not see down past the firefighter because of the smoke. I was going to push on through the smoke, continuing my attempt to get down the stairs with my son and get out of the burning building. I did not stop to consider whether there were flames behind the smoke, nor did I consider whether it was safe to continue down the sole escape route out of the building. Just as I began to step onto the 4th floor of the stairwell where the smoke was heaviest, I heard my wife shout behind me, "Stop! Come back!" or similar words. She shouted about 3 times. I did not know whether she was in danger or if she had fallen, and I did not stop to think or ask why she was shouting. I immediately turned around and followed her back up the stairs as she had turned back up the building. Once again, as I had on the way down, I ran with my son in my arms as fast as I could. I followed my wife as I could not see the floor numbers on the stair landings. We ran back to our flat in a rapid time frame. I did not see anyone coming up or down the stairs at any time during this period, which had been our first attempt to escape the tower. My wife telephoned 999 from her mobile telephone almost as soon as we re-entered the flat. She was not on the telephone very long, and I recall that she explained slowly and clearly the situation. There was not much conversation. From what she has since told me, the operator did not ask her many questions. When she got off the phone, my wife seemed slightly less worried. She was reassured by having spoken to someone who seemed to know what they were talking about. My wife told me that the 999 operator had told her to put items around the bottom of the door in order to stop smoke coming into our flat. I went immediately to get a quilt and I started putting it around the bottom of the door. I recall looking out of the windows from our flat and I could see people on the ground below waving, and I could hear them shouting to people to get out of the tower. I still could not see any fire at this stage. In my mind, I rapidly thought that we needed to try again and escape. However, I remembered the notices in the tower and the advice that we should stay in our flat as it was not on fire. We had received advice from the 999 operator on how to stem smoke ingress, but I realized by now this would not help us to eventually escape. Turafat was saying things like, "What are we going to do? Are we going to have to jump?" It was a harrowing experience to see my wife with those thoughts in her mind. We had made an attempt to leave. We had tried to get out of the tower, but we had failed. We had been in our flat for no more than 5 minutes when there was a loud banging and knocking at the door. I cannot recall whether it was my wife or whether it was me who opened the door, but when it was opened, there was a tall firefighter standing there. He was wearing a mask and had a torch on his head. He said something like, "You need to get out of the building." Then he shouted, "Out." I cannot recall the exact words spoken by the firefighter because of the panic and the state of mind that I was in at the time. But I do recall that my wife then tried to explain to him our previous attempts to leave the building. I could hear the desperation and the urgency in her voice as she spoke rapidly to him. The firefighter did not engage with my wife. He said, shouting again, "Out." We did not need to be told more than twice. The firefighter did not give us any, such as breathing apparatus or a smoke hood. I already knew the grave and unimaginable danger that I and my family could be in, having seen the smoke billowing from the stairs on the 4th floor staircase. There was no hesitation, however, as I was going to leave the flat and the tower immediately, and regardless of the conditions below us. Our second and final attempt to leave the tower was at some point before 1:45 a.m. I grabbed, and then the name of Mr. Abebe's son's redacted, into my arms, covering his mouth with the scarf again, and I left the flat. On the landing as I exited the flat door, I could see another firefighter banging on other front doors of other flats on 7th floor. I got to the stairwell before my wife and started descending the stairs with my son. My wife, who I now know went back to the flat to get water for our son for the moment we left the building, was about 6 or 7 steps behind me. I had not reached the bottom of the first flight of stairs before she came into the stairwell. While the lights were on and I could see where I was going, the smoke was heavier higher up in the stairwell than it had been when I first tried to escape, but there was no problem with visibility. I ran down the stairs as quickly as I could, hearing my wife just behind me. Like our first attempt to escape, the smoke became thicker the further down the stairs we got. By the 4th floor, where we had seen the firefighter on our previous attempt to get down the stairs, a firefighter, I cannot recall whether it was the same firefighter, was on the stairs to the 4th floor again. I do not recall seeing the landing door open this time, and as a result, the smoke in that area was not as thick as it had been before. I do not talk to the firefighter, and I did not make eye contact with him. I do not know whether he saw us coming down the stairs. I could feel the panic rising as the smoke hit the back of my throat in the stairwell, as it was black and smelled toxic. Turafat was coughing behind me. She was muttering, but I could not hear what she was saying. I now know that she was praying. We did not have time to stop and ask the firefighter what was going on or whether it was safe to carry on down the stairs. I pushed on rapidly, running down the stairs. After we passed the 4th floor, the smoke thinned out. We did not see anyone apart from the firefighter who'd been on the 4th floor stairwell. There was no one ascending or descending the stairs while we made our final attempt to leave the building. I've since been told by my wife that the floor of the stairwell was wet, but I cannot recall noticing that at the time. As we reached the ground floor, I put my son down so that he could walk for himself. The relief started to set in as I realized that my family and I had escaped the building. I do not recall seeing firefighters or other emergency services personnel inside the ground floor reception area of Grenfell Tower at this time. I cannot recall when we left exactly, but I'm now aware from a still image from the CCTV cameras provided to me by the Metropolitan Police that the police have a record that I left the building at 1:48 a.m. I believe that we were in the tower for approximately 20 minutes from being alerted that there was a fire in the building to making it out to safety. It felt like an awful lot longer than that at the time. And that's where I'm going to end reading from that statement, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you.
And the next statement I turn to is that of Mr. Abebe's wife, Turafat Yilma Germa. The statement is at reference IWS 50848. There is one exhibit to that, which is marked in the statement as TG1 and has the reference, we don't need to put it up, IWS 50934. It's a photograph taken after the Mrs. Germa had left the building. As I have said, Mrs. Germa is the wife of Abraham Abebe, and as I previously indicated, she'd lived in the tower since 1996, and as of June 2017, was living in flat 44 with her husband and son. You will have noted, Mr. Chairman, from Mr. Abebe's statement that he recalls being woken up by a phone call.
Yes.
And he then went out to see what was going on in the hallway, saw smoke, and the family decided to leave with their son. If I could pick up and read some extracts from Mrs. Germa's statement from page 4, please, paragraph 18. and this is from the point Mrs. Gomez records that she was woken up by her husband. My husband and I went to check out of the window in the living room. That window looks out to the playground area below the tower. On the walkways, people were standing and waving and shouting, "Fire, fire." I could see from the reflections on the buildings around us the blue lights of emergency vehicles, and I could see people waving on the ground. There was, however, no sign of fire that we could either see or hear. I immediately started to panic. I had no idea what to do. I was asking my husband frantically, "What do I do? What do I do?" My husband went to our front door and looked through the peephole. He said he could see greyish-white smoke in the hallway and told me that we must leave immediately. I was panicking, but we were moving quickly, and I felt that it was sensible and safe to get out of the building and away from the fire. At that time, I could not smell smoke inside my flat, and I could not hear sirens or any smoke alarms going off, either inside my flat or outside in the hallway. It was less than 2 minutes between us getting up and then deciding to leave Grenfell Tower. My husband grabbed our young son. We knew that it was common sense not to use the lift, as I remember from other buildings, not Grenfell Tower, that there were signs I'd seen telling people that you're not supposed to use the lift in the event of fire. We left the flat. I locked the front door behind me, and bringing only my key and my phone, we ran to the stairwell. My husband was in front of me by only 2 or 3 steps. He was carrying our young son in his arms. My husband had put a scarf over our son's mouth and nose. When we went out onto the landing, there was light grey-coloured smoke, but you could see through it. The light on the landing was on, so I ran to the door to the stairwell. Abraham was in front of me carrying our son. The lights were on in the stairwell. I cannot remember whether there was smoke on the stairs when we entered the stairwell. However, I do know that I could breathe relatively easily in the stairwell at our level. Certainly there was no thick smoke going down the stairs from the 7th floor until we got to the 5th and 4th floors, and we were able to see ahead of us. I was not coughing, and nor was my son and husband. Between each floor, there were 2 flights of stairs divided by a small landing. We ran down the stairs as quickly as we could manage. When we got to the landing between the 5th and the 4th floor, we could see a firefighter holding open the door to the landing on the 4th floor. I cannot recall exactly what he was doing, but he was pulling at a fire hose. The hose was flat and there was no water coming through it. There was so much smoke. I could see thick, black smoke pouring out of the door from the 4th floor landing into the stairwell, as the 4th floor landing / fire door was being held open by the firefighter and his hose. The smoke hit me in the throat. It had a powerful, poisonous smell. I could not see anything past the firefighter, and I could not see the stairs between the 4th and 3rd floors. I assumed that there would be flames behind the smoke, and I was worried that we would succumb to the smoke. I made direct eye contact with the firefighter, but I did not speak to him, and he did not say anything to me. When I saw the smoke, I expected fire to also be there. I panicked, thinking that there might be fire coming into the stairwell. I did not know what was behind the smoke, and assumed that whatever had caused the smoke would certainly kill me and my family in the stairs. I called ahead to my husband. I shouted at him 3 times, "Come back, come back, come back." He turned around immediately, and then we began to run to back up the stairs to our flat. Now when I think about it, the firefighter could have told us to continue down the stairs and out of the building as we were on the stairwell. I assumed he must have known that there was not likely to be smoke down below us in the stairwell, and certainly no fire from where he had come up the stairs. When we began to ascend the stairs again, the firefighter could have told us that we should have come back and continue escaping the burning building, but he did not. He saw us clearly going up the stairs, higher into the building. I cannot recall anyone ascending or descending the stairs, either on our way down or our way up at this time, which would be just after 1:40 a.m. When we were running back up, panic started to hit me. I noticed that the signs on the stairwell marking each floor were so small and hard to see. I had to count each flight of stairs so that I knew when we had reached the 7th floor where we lived. as it was not clear which floor we were on. I called 999 as soon as we got back to the flat. It would have been between 1:42 and 1:45 a.m. on 14th June 2017. I called 999 on my mobile phone, and Mrs. Gurma then gives the number she used, and then she continues, I told the operator, a woman, where I was in Grenfell Tower and the floor we were on in the building. I said that I was with my husband and my son, and I told her that we tried to get out, but we were unable to because there was too much smoke. She did not ask me any questions and told me that the fire brigade were aware of the fire and that help was coming. She told me we should stay inside the flat and we should put towels around the front door. I told my husband the advice I received, and he put a quilt cover down by the bottom of the front door. I was significantly less panicked as a result of the phone call. After all, I thought that I had received advice from people who knew what they were talking about. I was confident that the fire services were going to come, even by helicopter, to put out the fire and to rescue the people in the tower. I was not calm, but I was a lot less panicked than I had been before on the stairwell. We'd spoken to the fire brigade and they had given us advice to stay in our flat. However, I could feel the panic and the terror rising within me. I kept saying to Abraham, what are we going to do? Are we going to jump? However, I still had confidence that something was going to happen, that we were going to be rescued. At that point, I thought that it was impossible that we were going to go out unaided and that we were going to try and leave again via the stairs. We had seen the thick black smoke on the 4th floor. I knew that the smoke was coming into the stairwell and possibly the fire. I thought that the only way to get out of the smoke, as I thought fire was behind the smoke, would be to jump. I thought that there was no way that we were going to be able to get out of the tower through the stairs. At the time, I did not know whether I would have survived that jump from the 7th floor. I knew there was a playground below. I just do not know what I was thinking at the time, as I was in a panic. I now know that I would not have survived a jump from the 7th floor, which is so high, it almost guarantees certain death. In my mind, in that situation, jumping was the only chance of not being burned to death. Even if I did not survive the fall, it was going to be a less painful way of dying than burning to death. But surviving was my main priority. The only thing that was in my mind, as in so many others, was getting out of the fire and saving my family. We were in our flat for what would subsequently be the last time for only a matter of minutes. Then I heard a loud knock at the door. My husband was by the front door, putting the quilt cover at the bottom of the door, so he opened the door. A firefighter, I could only see one firefighter, stood at the front door of our flat. He had a mask on and a light on his head. Behind the firefighter, I could see grey-white smoke, significantly thicker in the landing than it was before. The firefighter was tall. He told us, "You have to leave the building, get out." I told him that we had tried to leave the building already, that I had my young son in the flat, and that we had considered it was too unsafe when we left before. I explained that I wanted to try and leave the building, but there was too much smoke. He did not respond to what I said and simply shouted out. He did not give us any advice about how to get out, or that we should use any wet towels to cover our faces, or suggest anything to help with the smoke. I believe that as we were talking to the firefighter, smoke came into our flat from the landing. However, I cannot recall this with absolute certainty, but there was smoke on the landing at the time we were talking. As soon as the firefighter had said out, my husband grabbed our son, put the scarf over our child's mouth and nose in order to help with the thick smoke which we knew we would meet on the 4th and 5th floors. I ran into the kitchen and I grabbed my Brita water filter. I felt that my son would need it if we were able to get out of the building. Leaving my home for what would be the last time, I locked the door behind me and ran to the stairwell with my son. The firefighter did not come with us. I cannot recall where the firefighter went when he left the front door of our flat. Abraham was running ahead of me, and he had son's name in one hand, and in his other hand he was holding the scarf up to son's mouth and nose. There was grey smoke on the landing, but I do not recall it being difficult to breathe on our second attempt to escape. When I left the flat, there were none of our neighbours on the landing. I pulled the door to the stairwell open. Abraham had gone slightly ahead of me with son son's name, redacted, and he was down the first flight of stairs by the time that I had opened the door to the stairwell. I was possibly 6 or 7 steps behind him at all times. As soon as we got into the stairwell, I recall a strong and overpowering sensation of burning in my throat as I was hit by heavy smoke. I cannot recall whether it was hot or not in the stairwell. I could, however, smell a nasty, poisonous smell. It was like nothing I had ever smelt before. The smoke was really bad. It was black and thick. I just concentrated on where I put my feet on the steps. After the fire, I've become worried and nervous at any time I have smelt smoke. The terrible events of the fire and the loss suffered by our community come rushing back to me. I have never before smelt anything like that awful smell of smoke from Grenfell Tower. We ran down the stairs as quickly as we could. I remember saying to myself, oh my God, Jesus Christ. I said this to myself, half in panic. The lights were on in the stairwell and I could just about see where I was going. From the 7th floor until the 4th floor, the smoke got incrementally thicker and more acrid. I could feel the smoke burning and irritating the back of my throat all the way down. When we reached the 4th floor of the building, the smoke was still pouring into the stairwell from the open door to the landing, leading to flats on the 4th floor. The floor was wet on this level. There was a firefighter by the door of the 4th floor, as I could just see through the smoke. He said nothing to us, and I did not say anything to him. He was stood holding the door open, and there was thick black smoke pouring out from the hallway into the stairwell where we were. I was running at such a speed, plus I was so panicked and scared, that I did not take any time to stop and look for any great length of time to see what he was doing. After I passed the 4th floor, the smoke started to get less dense and less thick. It became incrementally less toxic and acrid as we reached the lower floors of the building. Mercifully, there was little smoke when we reached the lobby area on the ground floor of the tower. Mr. Chairman, that's where I intend to pause reading from that statement.
Yes. Thank you very much.
The next statement that we need to put into the record is at IWS 401003, and it is the statement of Michael Thomas Philip Paramasavian. He was living in flat 45 on the 7th floor, and he exited the building at a time of 1:24. The statement has no exhibits to come with it, but if we go to the last page, the 10th page, please, page 10, it has a statement of truth. It's signed and dated the 17th of May 2018. To give some background, Mr. Paramasavian had moved into Grenfell Tower in 2016. He was living there at the time of the fire with his partner, Hannah West, and her daughter. If I could take you, Mr. Chairman, to paragraph 19 in the statement, which deals, it's page 6, and it deals with the night of the fire. On the night of 14th of June 2017, the first indication which I recall that there was a fire or something else unusual was happening was a smell of plastic. This was at approximately 1 a.m. on the 14th of June 2017. I was in bed at the time but awake watching a film. Both my partner and her daughter were asleep. The smoke alarm in flat 45 did not activate at the time, nor did I hear a smoke alarm activated in any neighbouring flat. Immediately I realised that there was a fire in Grenfell Tower. I woke up my partner and her daughter, and we evacuated the block. I believe at this stage the actual location of the fire was 3 floors above the floor on which flat 45 is located, which is the 7th floor. The smoke appeared to change colours as the fire progressed. The colour of the smoke appeared to be blue at the time that explosions, which I assume were caused by gas, occurred in the black, and the smoke then appeared to take on orange, red and yellow shades. The smoke was very dense and also took on shades of black, white and grey. I did not actually see the fire spread outside of the block, and I did not take any pictures or recordings of the fire. The fire appeared to spread upwards from the 4th floor of Grenfell Tower before engulfing the whole building. Within 15 to 20 minutes of evacuating Grenfell Tower, the whole building appeared to be ablaze, and the fire was producing a distinctly acrid smell. Apart from the flames, the entire building appeared to also be engulfed in smoke. I did not call 999, as in the panic I left my phone in the flat. The maximum time I remained in the flat before evacuating with my partner and her daughter was 5 minutes. As we were making our way down the stairs to evacuate, I definitely recall a person in uniform, who I assume was a firefighter, shouted, "Stay in your flats," or words to that effect. I did not have any contact with firefighters before vacating the flat. Prior to the fire, Flat 45 was in a good state of decorative repair. I was informed after the fire that there was fire present in Flat 45. I was unable to do anything to stop the fire spreading. There was no actual smoke in Flat 45 prior to our evacuation, but there was dense smoke on the landings and stairs. We did not take any possessions with us when we evacuated the flat. We were in genuine fear for our lives and were completely focused on leaving the block. We did not take any protective clothing when we evacuated. To protect my partner's child from smoke inhalation, I covered her with my dressing gown as we made our way down the stairs. There was nobody left in the flat following our evacuation. No one helped us to evacuate. I think the front door of our flat was left open when we evacuated, and no one provided any advice or assistance about evacuation procedures. As we left the flat, the smoke was quite dense on the landing and stairs. I was aware of other persons, probably neighbours, on the landing. I felt very scared, but focused on protecting my partner and her daughter and just getting out of the block as quickly as possible. I was holding my partner's daughter, and Hannah, my partner, was in front of me. I was not aware a large number of other residents on the stairs as we evacuated. The smoke caused an acrid smell, and I was aware of this acrid taste as I breathed. Although there was smoke on the landing, I did not see any actual flames. Because of the smoke, I did not see any other flat doors on the landing as we evacuated. To the best of my recollection, I saw 3 other people on the landing as we evacuated Flat 45. I believe one of these persons was a firefighter. This was the person who shouted, "Get back to your flats." I did not respond to this advice. My only concern was to evacuate with my partner and her child as quickly as possible. I had to open the door between the landing and the stairs, and we immediately descended the stairs. I could hear people screaming. Because of the thick smoke, I could not actually see my feet until we reached the 2nd floor. I could only see about 2 steps in front of me until we reached the lower floors. I did not use the handrail, and as I was holding, and its name redacted of Miss Wester's daughter, I could not say if I could see my outstretched hand. I held my breath for as long as possible between breaths to avoid inhaling the smoke. The temperature was very high. I perspired. It took approximately 10 minutes to evacuate the building. The stairs were not slippery and there were no obstructions blocking our path. It did not occur to me or cross my mind to evacuate by the lift, as I knew that this could potentially present a greater danger and impair our escape. We immediately made our way down the stairs and left the block by the communal doors, which were open. When we got out of Grenfell Tower, we were shepherded to a nearby block, then to Chelsea and Kensington Town Hall, and then to the Latimer Road Christian Centre. As we moved from one location to another, we spoke to other residents and people watching the fire. And that's where I'll stop, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
The next statement to put on the record is the statement of Hannah West, whom we've just heard, who was living in flat 45 with her daughter and her partner, whose statement we've just read. And she, in her statement, explains that she'd moved into flat 45 in the spring of 2016. The statement reference is IWS 6021. There are no exhibits to put on the record, but it's a 12-page statement. And if we go to the last page, please, page 12. It has a statement of truth. It is signed and it is dated the 24th of April 2018. Mr. Chairman, again, if I would like to just read a few paragraphs from this statement. Yes. And if I go to page 3, paragraph 15, please. If I say the name of Miss West's daughter has been redacted from this statement, so as we come to it, I'll just refer to her as Miss West's daughter. On the evening of 13th of June 2017, Mickey, my daughter, and I were at home in the flat. I put my daughter to bed at about 8 p.m. Mickey and I watched TV for a bit until I felt really tired, and went to bed at about 10:30 p.m. I was woken up by Mickey saying, "Babe, babe, there's a fire." Mickey was shouting and sounding scared, which was unusual. I was half asleep. I think this must have been about 1:20 a.m. because I think we got out of the tower at 1:30 a.m. I said, "What's going on?" I sat up in bed. Our bed faced the bedroom door, and the bedroom door is opposite the front door. The bedroom door was open, and I could see smoke coming through the front door. The smoke was grey. It was quite thick, but I could see through it. It was scary to see that. I was confused and I was panicking, thinking about my daughter. It smelt just like normal smoke. I was still half asleep, but remember thinking, what the fuck is going on? I got out of bed. I was wearing a grey Oxford University t-shirt and underwear. Mickey was wearing a black dressing gown and dark-coloured boxer shorts. I moved quickly. I knew I had no time to waste. Even as I came out of the bedroom, the smoke was getting thicker. Mickey got my daughter from her bedroom and wrapped her in his dressing gown. My daughter was wearing a dark-coloured nightie that came down to just below her knee. Mickey put me in front of me and guided me forward in front of him as all three of us came out of the front door. We didn't take anything with us. We knew we had to get out fast as there was smoke in the flat. As we came out of the flat, I heard someone say, "Get out, get out," but I could not tell who this person was or where he was at that point. It was definitely a male voice. In the lobby, I was aware of my neighbours, an elderly Spanish or Portuguese couple carrying suitcases. I'm pretty sure we were in front of them as we made our way to the staircase. I was not aware of anyone else in the lobby. We knew that the stairs were to our left, just around the corner from our flat. We made our way in that direction without needing to discuss it. Smoke on the landing was cloudy but not thick. It was, though, getting thicker and thicker, even in the short time it took for us to get from our flat to the staircase. The lights in the lobby were on. We came out of the door and made our way towards the staircase. Although it was smoky, I was able to see but not far. I went towards the staircase, relying upon my memory. I was in front, with Mickey and my daughter behind. As I got towards the door to the stairwell, I saw a firefighter on his knees holding the door open to the stairwell. As I saw the firefighter, I pulled my t-shirt up over my mouth and nose. This was because the smoke was getting thicker and I didn't want to breathe it in. My t-shirt was now across half of my face. I was quite close to the door to the staircase before I saw the firefighter. The landings are not large anyway. I was almost within touching distance of him when I first saw him. It was his uniform that stuck out to me. I did not stop. I just continued towards the staircase, but I can remember the sheer look of fear and dread on his face. To the best of my recollection, he was a white man. I can't remember what colour his helmet was, but I do recall that he was wearing a helmet. I do not know what he was doing there. I was focused on getting out. He was holding the door open. He was squatting with his back to the open door. The door opened into the stairwell. There was no one immediately in front of me. I could not work out why he was doing that, holding the door open. It was easy to open that door. I could hear shouting and screaming. I'm not sure whether the noise of people shouting, screaming was from above or below at this point. I heard shouts of help and hello. I now believe it must have been this firefighter who I heard say, get out, as there was no one else around. I did not hear him saying anything other than that. There was definitely no hose with him that I saw. I did not touch anything before entering the stairwell. Once we got to the stairs, the smoke on the stairwell was really thick and getting thicker. It was worse than the lobby. The heat was intense. My priority was to get off those stairs. There was a lot of commotion. I could hear screams. The lights were on in the stairwell, but it became dark as we made our way down. I believe the lights on my floor stayed on, but there was no light lower down. The heat on that stairwell was intense. I remember other people on the stairs. There was a bit of pushing and shoving. I did not find my way blocked by other people. It was dark and hard to tell what was happening. Everyone knew it was serious, and everyone's aim was to get out as soon as possible. It was definitely not a stampede. The stairs were not slippery. I did not slip. I knew that there was no time. I wasn't going too quickly because I did not want to fall on the stone stairs. I was barefooted. I was trying to go fast, but I could not see where I was going. I was holding onto the handrail because I couldn't see the steps. The handrail felt cold to the touch. I think it's a metal handle. When we were going down the stairs, there was thick smoke, and as we went down, the heat became more and more intense. On the stairs, the smoke was thick enough that you didn't want to breathe it in, and thicker than the smoke that there had been on the landing. It got thicker the further down we went. I still had my T-shirt up over my nose and mouth. My eyes were burning. My throat was burning. I was trying to keep my eyes open. I did not look backwards, but at one point I felt Mickey touch my shoulder. I knew he had my daughter in his arms. I kept holding onto the handrail. I was right in front of him. Mickey has told me that he put me in front of him as we came out of the flat because he did not want to lose me on the stairs. I knew the layout of the stairs. I would have been able to walk down those stairs with my eyes shut. There are about 12 steps on each flight. I wasn't talking to Mickey because I didn't want to breathe in any of the smoke. I heard loads of screams in the stairs. There was a lot of activity, screaming, shouting, the calling out of people's names. I cannot remember any particular names being shouted out. The noise was mostly happening above us, but I could hear commotion below us as well. I could feel bodies pushed past. There were firefighters present. I remember seeing yellow helmets. It's a clear image. My eyes were burning. There was just so much action on the stairs. To the best of my recollection, there was a firefighter going up the stairs as I came down, but it was difficult to tell what was happening. My strongest sense was my hearing. There was a lot of panic and fear. On that staircase, 2 people can pass if they make room for one another. I would estimate that there are about 3 or 4 people whom I came into contact with as I went down those stairs, including the firefighter coming up, so 2 or 3 coming down. I do not recall them saying anything to me as they passed. I was dazed from being asleep. Everyone was confused. I cannot say which floor it was, that there were no lights, and we had to continue down in darkness. It felt like a nightmare. Everything was getting more and more intense. I just wanted to get my daughter, Mickey, and me out. At this time, we didn't even know what had happened. Time was moving really slowly. Even though it was probably 10 seconds since we left the flat, it felt like 10 minutes. When we got to the bottom of the stairs and opened the door, everything was light and there was no smoke. It was as if nothing had happened. It was like coming out of a nightmare. That's the only way I can describe it. We went through a door. As I came out of the staircase into the lobby, even before leaving the tower, everything seemed normal. The lights were on, there was no smoke. It was as if there was nothing wrong. I went through the 2 doors and onto the stairs on the outside of the building. As we came out of our flat onto the landing, I would describe the smoke as similar to the diagram marked D that I'd been shown, and that when I went into the staircase, it was like the diagram marked E. I paused there, Mr. Chairman, because I think, just for the record, that's a reference to the smoke descriptor that's been provided by the inquiry to witnesses. I believe the firefighter might have been on his knees, as there was less smoke at that level. He may have had oxygen, I don't know. In the staircase, I had to put myself in the smoke to be able to get downstairs. I would say the smoke was grey on the landing, but that in the staircase it was thick, toxic smoke. On a scale of 10, with black being 10 and clear glass being 0, I would describe the smoke in the stairs as a 7, and in the landing outside my flat as a 5. As I left the tower, I could see the firefighters running in. When I first got down, there wasn't a lot of firefighters there was only a couple. I can remember the firefighters running in and a firefighter with a hose outside, but the water wasn't coming out. And that's where I propose to stop reading from that statement, please.
Right, thank you very much.
There are just 3 more statements to put on the record this afternoon. They are statements from 3 members of the Jamal Vatan family who lived in flat 10 on floor 3 of Grenfell Tower. And the first statement I will put on the record is the witness statement of Mabube Jamal Vatan. The reference is at IWS 6078. There are no exhibits accompanying it. Mrs. Jamal Vatan was in her home on the night of the fire and she exited at 1:24. It's a 9-page statement. On page 9, if we go to that, we see that there is a statement of truth. The statement is signed and is dated the 1st of May 2018.
Yes, thank you.
In summary, Mrs. Jamal Vatan lived with her two children, Sahar and Sajjad, in flat 10 of Grenfell Tower, and they'd moved there in August 2016. Mrs. Jamal Vatan is disabled, she has mobility issues, and her daughter Sahar was her registered carer. On the night of the fire, she was home alone, her two children having gone out that evening to the cinema. If I could just pick it up, please, with Mrs. Jamal Vatan's account of the night of the fire at paragraph 25 on page 4.
Yes.
She records just that she went to bed at around 11 p.m. and if we start with paragraph 25, it continues. Shortly after, I was woken up by shouting and screaming, but I could not figure out what was being said. Through my bedroom window, I saw small pieces of fire were falling. I could see this from my bed. I thought the person in the flat above may have accidentally set something on fire, such as a pillow, and that they were shaking it out of the window. I do not know who lives in the flat above me. As I thought it was unimportant, I went back to sleep. I take sleeping pills, which means I can go to sleep quickly. At around 1:20 to 1:30 a.m., I was woken by a very loud bang, as if something hit the floor of the flat above me. It sounded like bombing. I got out of bed, went to the living room, and looked through the window which faces the gym and saw a fire engine outside. I could also see hundreds of people gathered below. I saw a firefighter spraying water from a hose onto the building. I could see big flames covering the entire window facing the gym. Burning pieces were falling from above my flat and past my window. The flames were moving left from the window facing the gym to the direction of the school. I realized that the fire was serious and I started shaking. It was not only a mattress on fire as I had initially thought. The water that the firefighter was spraying could only reach my window that faced the school. It could not reach the other side of the building. The water from the hose also could not reach any higher than the level of my flat. I could feel the heat from the fire and was slightly sweating. I went from one room to other and did not know what to do. I was shaking. I could smell burning from the side of the children's bedrooms, but there was no smoke inside the flat. I picked up my handbag, which contained the key to the flat, and I picked up my mobile phone so that I could call my children. I also switched off the electricity in the fuse box to the right of the front door. I then hurried out of the flat, shutting the door behind me. I did not lock the door. I was in such a rush to leave that I forgot my stick, which I used to help me walk. There was no one else in the hallway outside my flat. The lights were on and I could see clearly. I went towards the lift and pressed the button to call it. When the lift arrived and the door opened, it was full of people, and there was not space for me to fit in. People were screaming. I decided to go down the stairs instead. This was very difficult for me without my stick. I had to sit on each stair and bump my way down. I then turned around and crawled down backwards using my hands and legs. The lights were on and I could see clearly. There was some smoke and I could hear shouting in the stairwell. I knew now that it was serious. I did not see anyone else while I was going down the stairs until I reached the first floor. On the first floor, 2 firefighters passed me heading up the stairs. They seemed quite relaxed. They were not wearing full protective clothing and they were carrying boxes in their hands. They did not ask me if I needed help. I asked them what was happening and they told me to leave. Eventually, I reached the ground floor. I think in total it took me around 10 to 15 minutes. I think I left the building at approximately 1:20 a.m. I do not think I inhaled any smoke, but I was slightly short of breath because I was panicked. I did not hear any alarms while I was in my flat or in the rest of the building. No one told me to leave. It was my own decision to exit the building. And that's all I propose to read from Mrs. Jamal Vatan's statement. But if I could turn now to the statement of her son, Sajjad. As I explained, he was out with his sister on the evening of the 13th of June, but he received, they'd gone to the cinema and they received a call from their mother around 1 a.m. informing them about the fire. And they then returned home immediately and found their mother outside. There's just 2 parts of the statement that I would wish to highlight today. And that's, so before I do that, what I need to do, of course, is formally put it into the record, and
Yes.
that is, the statement reference is IWS 6068. No, it has an exhibit as part of the statement, which is a floor plan. Sorry, may I just have a moment? Sorry, I got the reference wrong. If I do start again with that, the reference for Sajjad Jamal Vatan's statement is IWS 50900.
Yeah.
If I put that in, it has, as I've said, an exhibit that is part of the statement, which is a floor plan of flat 10. The statement is 8 pages, and if we go to page 8, I'm sorry, I'm probably, I should have asked for a break. I'm going to start that all over again. To put onto the record the witness statement of Sajjad Jamal Vatan, the correct statement reference is IWS 6068. It has, as part of the statement, an exhibit, which is on page 9, and which is a floor plan. But if we go to the page 8 of the statement, shows that it is, carries a statement of truth. It is dated the 17th of April 2018 and is signed. As I explained, Mr. Chairman, Sajjad wasn't in flat 10 on the night of the fire. He had gone to the cinema with his sister, but whilst they were out, they received a call from their mother, whose statement we've just put into the record, and that was to tell them about the fire. And they then obviously returned back home immediately, and they were able to meet their mother outside. But if I then just pick it up, please, at page 5, paragraph 23.
Yes, right.
I eventually found my mum about 30 minutes after we got to Grenfell. I cannot be sure what time I found my mum. It could have been about 1:40 a.m. I was so relieved to find her. She was with a group of people from the tower. The police were pushing people back, trying to clear the area. They put barriers up as they thought the building was going to collapse, and they wanted to ensure those of us outside the tower were safe. I could hear people speaking on their mobile phones to their families in the tower. I was telling them to say to whoever was in their homes in the tower that they needed to put wet towels on the floor under the doors to keep the fire out. They also needed to keep low. If I move to the next paragraph, at about 2 a.m., I heard an explosion on the other side of the building. I'm not really sure of the time. I assumed that it was an explosion. I thought it was a gas bottle that exploded. After that explosion, I could see many windows were cracked. The noises were awful, much louder than before. The fire was expanding throughout the building. We were now all being evacuated from the area. I could not see the tower anymore. Mr. Chairman, if I then move down to paragraph 29, Sajjad then says, I went back to where my mum was. She did not appear to be breathing. I shouted to anyone who would listen to me, help, help. My mum is looking for her breath. I saw an ambulance, and I was so lucky that someone was there to offer me an oxygen mask. I had to beg for it. Everyone, including the ambulance personnel and firefighters, all seemed so shocked and not sure what they were doing. I gave my mum the oxygen mask so that she could breathe. And that's as far as I propose to read from that statement, if I may.
Right.
And the last statement that we're going to put on the record today is that of Sahar Jamal Vatan, Sajjad's sister. The statement, I hope I get it right, its reference is IWS 50325. And it is, if we go to page 7, on that page carries a statement of truth, is signed and is dated the 18th of May 2018. As part of the statement, there is incorporated within it a floor plan of flat 10. Sahar was with her brother and outside the tower on the night of the fire, but it's helpful if I could just take you, Mr. Chairman, to page 3 of the statement in paragraphs 13.
Yes.
The flat did not have a balcony, and the windows could not be opened fully in order to be used as an escape route. The main door of the flat was self-locking. It would spring shut, but I usually pushed it shut at the end. I'm not sure if it would have closed by itself fully if I had not done this. On leaving the flat, you could see a rubbish chute on your left next to a storage area, and beside the storage there was a staircase, and on your right there were 2 lifts. The staircase and the lifts were opposite each other. If you went down a few steps down the stairs on my floor, you could see a door which was self-closing and led to the main staircase. By using the staircase and going down, you reached the bottom of the stairs. There was a door on the left-hand side to the main entrance, and on the right-hand side, there was a door to the outside of the building to the back. The main door to the tower was an automatic door, which was installed about a month before the fire. My front door was not replaced during the time I lived at Grenfell Tower, and there was no damage to it. It had 2 hinges on the side. There was a gap between the bottom of the door and the floor, and there was a draft seal fitted. We had a letterbox which sprung shut after being opened. All rooms in my flat had doors which opened and closed. And if I finish reading there, but just add perhaps as a final point that the Jamal Vatan family had moved into flat 10 in August 2016. Mr. Chairman, that is all of the reading for today.
Right, well, thank you very much. And I think it's right that, as I said this morning, I'm very grateful to all those who've taken so much time and trouble to produce the statements that you've been reading extracts from this afternoon. I'm very struck by the fact that many of them are obviously very detailed, very lengthy, and in all cases they've been compiled with great care. And they will all form part of the evidence before the inquiry and will be taken into account when the inquiry makes its findings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good, thank you very much. So that's all we
Yes, may I
can
just
do
make
today.
one final point in relation to tomorrow? We have 2 witnesses who will be heard tomorrow, but we were due to hear also the oral evidence from Mr. Hamid Wabi. I hope those here have seen a letter which has gone out from the inquiry, but just to confirm, Mr. Wabi will not be giving evidence tomorrow, but he will be heard later on in the programme.
Right. So we'll have another witness at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Very good. Thank you all very much. 10 o'clock tomorrow then, please.